Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
All right, we are here, and the early part of the crew is coming in. People will drift in as they go. Typically, Good Lawgic shows up when he shows up. He does not like to get up early, but he does do late shows, so I will credit him that. And
early, he's still on East Coast time.
He is on East Coast time.
Yeah, noon. Come on. This is what happens when the kids move out of the house. You got no one waking you up at 6 in the morning. It's
Are you sure the kids are out of this house? The guy has like an entire passel and grandkids, so I don't even know.
The grandkids probably, yeah, that would be the early alarm clock if he has those in the house.
And he does like stream till 3-4 in the morning, so I'll cut him some slack.
Yeah.
On that. Anyway. But
so he's picked up the Ricada time slot. I haven't been watching, and I don't want to start any fights, and I'm not interested in getting into it. But is Ricada doing the late night stream still?
He hasn't streamed in forever. I don't even know if he streams anymore. I don't even know what content he does. Nate, do you?
No, well, he's on Twitter a lot. The last thing I saw from Nick is because the Aaron M. Holt, he has his trial for the revenge stuff.
Yeah.
So I know that they're trying to subpoena the witness from New York to wherever they're at in Candiota County. But another interesting part is that subpoenas for witnesses don't travel well. We all of us lawyers know that. So if you're trying to subpoena someone from another state, that's going to be tough. And the other thing is that I think Aaron is going to trial for the charge because he doesn't believe that the witness is going to show up. So if the witness doesn't show up, he's likely going to get a walk. If the witness shows up, then he's probably going to be in trouble. So we'll see.
So isn't the witness Kayla? I'm confused.
No, well, Kayla, you need the person that he sent the images to to authenticate the text messages and the images. These images were sent to me. I saw them, and this is what I saw, because the charge is sending explicit images to a third party without the party's consent. So you have to show that person got those images and what those images were.
So, I just tangentially, because people send me stuff, I really don't follow it that well. But from what I understand, the third party then would be Gino or some name like that.
Yeah, Gino is a third party who received the text messages. So
and that's Aaron's friend. So by being a friend, if he might just say, no, I'm not going to show up because that's my buddy. And are you saying that gets Aaron off the hook?
Yes. So the way the case is played out, first Nick and his family, they went to the police, they did the arrest. Aaron was supposed to plead guilty. He was going to a plea agreement. I know he already had an issue before, so the plea agreement just went away. His friend, I believe, is in New York or in another state. So they just recently sent a subpoena to that person in another state, Gino, saying, hey, we need you to come here. We'll pay for your travel and stuff. So now if Gino shows up, then obviously Aaron's in trouble. Because then the case is just there. If Gino doesn't show up, then the prosecutors are going to have to drop the case because Aaron, they won't have a case without.
Quick question on that. I think everybody would be interested because this is something that could be templatable to other cases. What recourse does the state have to force Gino to show up or not? Are you saying that they have to just request it, and if he says pound sand, that there's nothing they can do?
Well, if you're it's a little iffy when you're in another state, because generally you can get extradited from one state to another if you've committed a crime. That's the Constitution, right? Any crime that you committed. So even if it's jaywalking, I can get you extradited. But Gino hasn't committed any crime, so he's essentially a material witness. So you can get a material witness warrant, which can get him extradited, or you can do a subpoena, which are the similar they're doing now, which can get him back. But most of the times when you have witnesses from other states, if they don't willfully come, then you're in trouble. You're probably not going to have a case.
Okay, that's interesting to know.
It's hard to get them. It's hard to get them into the state. I don't know if I'm assuming Joe and Viva may have had issues with. Well, Viva may have been different provinces.
Yeah,
but Joe,
provinces. It's not the end of the world. You have to get service in other provinces, and I forget exactly how to. I mean, we've done it, but it makes it a little more difficult than if they're within the province. But states, I don't know if there's more state autonomy than provincial autonomy.
In criminal
Well,
procedure, I
here's-
imagine you
right.
get assistance from a U.S. Marshal, but in civil procedure, if they don't want to come, it's very difficult unless they're a party. If they're a party to the case,
Then there's nothing they can do. Yeah.
then you can compel them to come. But if they're just some witness you're hoping to get in there, it's much more difficult.
What about this chat question? What about zooming it?
Well, sometimes you get dispensation from a court. Many judges don't like Zoom. They want the person there in person. They're very old school, which is actually, to be fair, Zoom is a pretty poor replacement for the feel the feel of the in-room court testimony. It's real. I mean, and just for the audience to understand, if you think back to the Deputy Heard trial, like whenever we saw, it was, unless it was a celebrity who was on Zoom who was testifying, like I think one of his former girlfriends who was Ellen Barkin came and was on Zoom. So there you're riveted because it's like, oh my gosh, this is Ellen Barkin testifying. That's much more compelling than when you have some Zoom thing of some guy you never heard of. You just
hold on. They had the guy in the car smoking or vaping at the time. He was
that guy was funny. But that guy caught your attention. He caught your attention because he was funny.
I think what Joe is saying is that when you're talking about a key witness to a fact event, like in this, he is the fact witness. He is the key witness.
Right,
You need him in the room so the jury sees him sweating and they can evaluate his credibility, because without him, you don't have a case. So that's different than, some the slimo guy you can have on a Zoom call because he's not critical to your case. But this guy is definitely critical to your case. And I think the defendant in some jurisdictions have to waive them not being there in person. And if I'm the defendant in this particular case, he's got to show up. I don't want no Zoom for him. I would say I got a confrontation issue. He needs to be here so we can evaluate his credibility. That
So
would
in
be
this
my argument.
case, if they are buddies, this does help him out in the sense that he can just say, yeah, not going nowhere. Can't make me, can't do it.
He could call their bluff. Now they can make him. They may have some procedure they can get him there, but generally, if he says I'm not coming.
And question on that, Nate. Let's say on the flip side, it's not a buddy situation. It's just somebody who's saying, look, I can't afford to go to this other state. I have a job, I have work, I can, lose money, or, I'm the only parent. I mean, there are circumstances, and is it fair that a person who is just a material witness, or, it did not actually commit the crime, is forced to go and travel to another location?
They'll generally take care of your travel expenses and stuff of that nature. But again, it's your civic duty, if you're a witness to a particular crime, to show up and tell them what you saw. So
okay, I didn't know, and I of course had a personal interest in this because there was a question of whether I was going to be pulled to New Mexico for some reason.
Oh yeah. But again, you just tell them, you tell the prosecutor, send me the paperwork, and they can't send you the paperwork because they know that's the fear. They'll threaten you, but they, it's just like, all right, send me the paperwork.
Okay. All right. Interesting. That was a fun one to start off on. Now let's go and pivot in while we're talking about New York right now. I think the big subject of the day, and I'm glad you're here, Joe, I definitely wanted you here for it, is what is going on with Eric Adams and I'll call it Thursday night massacre at the Justice Department, because it's really starting to feel a little bit like that. I mean, what are we up to? 6 resignations, Nate?
Yes, it's the six prosecutors who they've asked to drop the case. They are the ones. So just so everybody understands, Eric Adams he's had an investigation going on even before he was mayor into improper campaign finance stuff. Many of you know, most of his top lieutenants, everybody has been essentially either indicted or they've been raided by the cops. I'm talking about the deputy mayors, police commissioners. They all are.
Specify though, this is under the Biden administration. This is not under the Trump.
Yes, 100%. This is all under the.
And he's also a Democrat. Also,
and he's a Democrat. Yes. Yeah. So now Adams. Now, these charges actually occurred before Adams then came out and said the migrant crisis was going to destroy New York City, because they had already had the investigation going on. Then he says that thing about Biden. Then all of a sudden he's indicted, and that comes down. So that was going on, but now. To be fair to the Trump administration, there's always been a longstanding policy at the Justice Department that during an election, a particular political election, that they would not bring charges during that time, and so they wouldn't influence the election. So you won't bring charges right before an election, something like that, because it'll make it seem like the Justice Department is trying to influence the election.
Oh, yeah, there are questions about that with Trump. That
Yes.
they
You can well imagine. You can well imagine that Trump is particularly sensitive to this issue.
Correct,
So-
correct. So, so that was one issue. So then, so now the Attorney General, the Deputy Attorney General, had told the acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York to drop all the charges against
Eric
Adams with 3 conditions. So I actually have the memo here. I'll pull it up. That there were 3 conditions.
please do.
The first condition was that Eric Adams agrees that it be dismissed without prejudice, meaning they can bring the charges back. Condition 2 was that Eric Adams waive attorney's fees, because in the federal court system, if you are the prevailing party as a defendant, the government must pay all your attorney's fees. So they said Eric Adams had to waive that provision. And then number 3, the third one
is you got to help us get rid of your migrants.
Yes. So, but in the memo itself, it clearly states, and I think this is the issue that a lot of people are having. It states verbatim that they didn't look at the evidence at all. They didn't evaluate the case. They did nothing. They're just asking for these charges to be dropped, so he can help us with immigration, and we'll look at them again after the 2025 election.
Question on that. Okay, because I it smells bad, but then I'm thinking back. I'm going to use the New Mexico tie again.
Mhm.
Carrie Morrissey had charged Alec Baldwin for the killing of Helena Hutchins, and then she dismissed the charges for a while, only to refile them later. She dismissed the charges, sent the gun in for all the testing with the FBI. That went on for some months. Then she refiled the charges. Could that be seen as something similar here, that they may be dismissing the charges for now, let him go through his election, because won't be interfering with it. The second the election's done, though, we can regenerate the charges? Or am
Yes,
I misreading?
that's exactly what that's exactly what they said. So let me I'll pull up the document, because I don't want people to think that I'm making this up, because I know it sounds a little crazy. But they said, number 1, because they asked to dismiss the charges as soon as practicable. Here's the third condition: the matter shall be reviewed by the confirmed U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York following the November 25 election, mayoral election. But here they specifically say they reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the evidence or the legal theories on which the case is based. So, in other words, oops, sorry, I should have shared this. This is the Justice Department memo of them asking. So here's the 3 conditions: must dismiss with prejudice, 2, must be in writing, and he's got to waive attorney's fees, and 3, that the new U.S. attorney is going to look at it again after November 2025. And here they say the Justice Department reached conclusion without assessing the strength of the legal theories with the case was based. They just are saying they're just going to defer it. And on top of that, with this, so in other words, they're saying we're going to hold these charges essentially in abeyance. You continue to allow him to continue to help us with immigration, and then we'll reassess after the election whether we're going to bring these charges again. That's what this document says.
Right. And Danielle Sassoon, as well as other attorneys, Danielle Sassoon, there was a New York Times link to an article, to a letter she wrote to Pam Bondi. So Emil Bove, who is the acting deputy attorney general, he's the one who fired off a letter to her saying, this letter basically saying, drop the case. And we want you to go in there and request the court, because the court has to approve the dismissal, the withdrawal of the case. So Emil Bove, who is actually the deputy attorney general, and the current acting attorney general is Todd Blanche and Emil Bove. These were Trump's lawyers in the New York criminal proceeding, and despite the 34 convictions, I'll tell you that the legal work they did was really spot on work, and I think they were dead men walking starting in that case. Well, anyway, so Emil Bove fires off this letter, and Danielle Sassoon, to her credit, wrote back a letter, which I'll tell you was a very strongly worded letter saying that this is against her principles, and this is wrong, and she's not willing to do it, and she doesn't think a court is going to allow it. And it was a very well-written letter that she wrote, which the New York Times was very excited about, and everyone's screaming, oh, he's looking for some sort of quid pro quo because he wants to get rid of his illegal migrants, and that's why he's letting him go. Which, frankly, the term quid pro quo in this context is very misleading, because normally when people say quid pro quo, they're talking about a personal benefit. I want you to do this. I'll do this for you, and you do something back for me. That's the connotation that everyone assumes when they hear the term quid pro quo.
I guess I meant this for that.
This
and
for
not
that.
necessarily
That's
personal.
That's technically what the Latin term means. That's true. That is technically what the Latin term means. But I think when people hear it,
it's quick. I can see it though, because it helps Trump personally, politically, if he does help with the migrants, and
does
it does
he need help
him
politically?
Personally.
What help does he need politically? Is he ever running for anything ever again? What help does he need politically? He doesn't need help
needs to
politically.
get actions to take place for his presidency.
Oh, okay, but that's not a personal benefit.
Well, it's
not
his legacy.
Joe,
Legacy. Come on now.
I think what Joe is doing.
Now?
Yeah, I think what Joe is doing is trying to redefine what quid pro quo to make it.
No, I'm telling you.
Joe, everybody can see it. You're saying it's personal benefit. No. But Nate, you do this for me, help me with immigration, and then I'm going to do this for you and drop the charge.
That's the
business
of politics.
Every time you get a witness,
you're bullshitting us now.
No, that's crap. That's crap.
You are bullshitting us now.
No, that's crap. I'll tell you what.
You know it's this for that. This is a quid pro quo.
You're full of hot garbage, and the reason you're full of hot garbage, I'll point out to you. Okay,
I don't think it's this for that.
Every single time
you drop the, I drop the charges.
Every time some prosecutor says, I will drop charges against you as long as you roll over against the other guy, you're going to call that quid pro quo?
That's for that, yes. If you roll over on this other guy, that is
that's also called negotiation and politics. So we're not using quid pro quo in the criminal extortion or corruption sense. So everything's quid pro quo. It means nothing anymore. Congrats, we've lost a word.
Quid pro quo means I'm doing this for that. I'm doing this for that. Let's not use quid pro quo. Let's use what it means. This for that. If you do this, I'll give you that. If I help you with immigration, you will drop the charges. And he helped you with immigration, and he's dropping the charges.
No, that's not even true. You guys, hold on. Back up. That's not even true, Nate, because here's the thing.
Okay.
He was being politically targeted, because he was fighting back against immigration, because he spoke out against Biden. This isn't giving him a benefit.
So hold on.
Hold on.
Go ahead, Danny. Go ahead.
All this is doing is undoing what the Biden administration did in utilizing the DOJ and weaponizing it against Eric Adams. So there isn't really that much of a benefit to Trump besides showing that, hey, look, we have an unbiased DOJ. This is what we're going to pursue. Because let me be honest, I read through the indictment against Eric Adams.
It was weak.
And me and everyone else laughed, because this is exactly what every single politician in every single state has done to some extent. The things that are brought against him are all things you could argue against every politician. He became the target of the Biden administration simply because he said, we can no longer handle this many migrants, period. Well, so I don't see it as a quid pro quo.
Hold on, can I respond?
Nate's going to say that the investigation predated that, so that
I'm not even going to say that. I'm going to say I think maybe it's good if we maybe read the document, because in the document, with Jenny, what you're saying would be great. But in their document, they're saying drop the charges. They said we didn't even look at the evidence. We didn't look at all that. So you may believe that, but the Justice Department is not saying that. They're saying we didn't look at it. Hold on. No. Viva. I am
pull up the letter.
I am responding to it, but you just don't like the response. Let me bring up the facts, because I know the facts are a dangerous thing. Here are the facts. They say here. No, I'm reading the facts. The facts are a dangerous thing. And I don't think that's true. The Justice Department has reached this conclusion without assessing the strength of the case, the strength of the evidence, or legal theories on which the case is based. Hold on, let me just finish. What Danny's point was, well, because Eric Adams was being targeted and these charges may be false, blah, 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 we're going to drop them for the benefit. But that is only true if they evaluate the case. If they evaluated the case, none of what Danny's saying is applicable, because they didn't even look at the evidence in the case and then dropping the charges. I know you guys. They shouldn't look at the evidence that you're saying.
No, yes, right? Because everything that came from this was the fruit of the poisonous tree argument that could be used against them in court. If actually if push came to shove and they got into court and there was discovery, it turns out that the prosecution team had this motivation to go after him point blank and to find evidence to make up charges along the way, he could absolutely argue that. So yes, legally speaking, there is no reason to get into the facts of the case or to get into the theories of the case. If the entire case was based on targeting Eric Adams for political retribution, that's the point that I'm trying to make here.
Well, then I would say, go ahead, Eric.
Then I'm going to step back a little. So if that is the case, and they feel like it was a political prosecution, why didn't they just say we're dropping this case because it was excessive use of the Justice Department?
Yeah, why not just drop it all away?
This is political prosecution.
Because they want to do the same, and they don't want this thrown back in their face.
Because they really want to hold this over his head until November 2025 and keep the pressure on him so they can help. And we don't want to say it because it's supposed to be good for Trump. But listen, people, this is corruption at the highest level because they're using the Justice Department to put pressure on Adams to do it. And as a matter of fact, they even mention it in the same document that they want him to help with immigration.
Yes,
so I understand why Joe doesn't want to accept it, but Joe doesn't want to accept the fact that they didn't even look at the evidence. They didn't even look at the legal theories. And they said, we're going to put this aside and we're going to wait until, guess what? We make sure you do it.
I got to leave.
Go ahead, Joe. Tell the lies and get the narrative. Listen to him, people. Listen to him, people. If this was Joe Biden, he'd be saying something different. Go ahead and lie.
I gave you an analogy of someone getting a witness to roll over. Whenever they get a witness to roll over, do they say we're dismissing the charges of prejudice? No. Why? Because they want the person to actually act. I don't think there's any denial here. This is an objective that they want him to actually help in getting rid of migrants. So of course you're going to dismiss it without prejudice, because if you dismiss it with prejudice, you can never bring these charges again. In that case, what is his incentive once he gets out of jail and to get out of jail free card? What's his incentive to actually carry through on his commitment? I don't think that there's anything wrong with this, because I think it's the exact same thing as when we get a witness to roll over on someone else, but it's helping society. The entire objective here is a prosecutor is supposed to be benefiting society. It's not quid pro quo with the ugly taint of that term if the objective is to help society. Now, unless you're saying that this person now being forced to help society is a quid pro quo, which no one ever uses that term, then that's because the term quid pro quo implies that there's an ugly taint to this negotiated deal. No one likes having to let someone go. I'm wrapping up here. No one likes letting him go. But the reason why you dismiss it without prejudice is because you want to make sure that he actually carries through on his promise to help get rid of the migrants. Is that benefiting society the same way when someone rolls over on a bigger fish? That's benefiting society, that you're getting rid of a terrible criminal and letting go of a lesser criminal. And the overall net benefit society, while ugly in that you're letting this person walk, is still better than not making that deal.
Okay.
Similarly,
Joe,
better to let him help with migrants. And then
let David jump in.
I gotta go do my show. So sorry, guys, but I just want to say one thing.
Go ahead.
Nate's theory is redundant because when you dismiss the charges without prejudice, it goes by definition that you can bring them back whenever you need to. You don't need to specify why you reserve the right to bring them back later. And so I agree that it looks like something of a quid pro quo. Dismissed without prejudice, they can necessarily bring the charges back later. It goes without saying that they expect some cooperation, but they expect that anyhow. So they didn't need to say, we didn't look at the evidence. We reserve the right to bring them back after November, because you could have done that anyhow just by virtue of the fact that they were dismissed without prejudice. With that said, I got to go do my show. I'm sorry, guys.
Hang out, man. Thank you.
Yeah, take care, Viva. I think.
All right. Well, this super chat is kind of, I think, going on point with what you're saying, Nate. Does extortion lead to quid pro quo? I make your life hell until you comply doesn't sound like a mutual agreement when the victim submits. There is a it's question.
The problem is that, so Joe, I understand Joe's argument. Joe's argument is that, hey, we're doing it for the benefit of society. We're going to hold these charges over his head so he complies with our immigration policy. And and if that's what Joe is saying, I think that's corruption at its fullest extent. When you're holding criminal charges that you can bring now over someone's head and like a leaf and say, hey, we're going to bring these charges only if you don't do what we say politically. That's corruption. And we all, if this was a Democrat doing it, I'd be saying the same thing. It just happens to be Trump. Now, I'm not saying I'm mad about it, but I'm just calling it what it is. This is you do this for me, I won't do this for you, and they're doing it with criminal charges.
This
Joe's
is my
admitted it, but
issue.
Joe doesn't want to call it what it is.
This
No,
is my
I don't-
issue with it. I don't care about this part. In a lot of ways, I think I don't really care. But I'm concerned about 6 attorneys resigning and being threatened to be investigated because they resigned on something that they felt out of principle. My stance is, why, if this is such an easy no-brainer, can't the Deputy Attorney General write the charges himself? Can't he sign the document? If it is so clean and pure and proper, you do it. Why do you have to have somebody else under you do this and drop the charges?
I think it's
And
actually procedural.
That's why I think both Joe and Nate are right here to some extent. Nate, I don't agree that this is tantamount to corruption, but do I think that there is some advantage to, kind of lubricating the process that the Trump administration could go forward with anyway? But like I was saying before, Eric, if they're dismissing, without prejudice, they're not going to have to explain anything. And then on top of that, they don't need to look at this to say, you know what, we know that this was politically motivated. There's enough evidence outside of the actual case for us to say that you were the target of political corruption before we even came in. And so we're going to go ahead and drop the charges. So both things can be true. I think that both Nate and Joe are right on to a certain extent.
Respectfully, Danny, there's no such
That's
thing
okay.
as corruption. There's no such thing as corruption. It's impossible to have corruption when there's no.
Oh, I
personal-
don't think corruption.
when there's no
not
personal
corruption.
benefit. There has to be a personal benefit in order for there to be corruption. There's no basis to claim that Trump has any personal benefit here. And that's rather than just him trying to implement what he thinks is a better public policy. Now, Nate and others may disagree with his objective as far
I don't
as
think it's
better,
corruption.
what's a better public policy.
Yeah.
But and clearly Danielle Sassoon disagrees with that. And the letter that was fired back by Emil Bove, which was a brilliant, scathing letter. She wrote a great letter, and he wrote a great letter back. Was like, this is your job, upholding the Constitution. The public policy here is determined by the president, who's duly elected by 77 million people. He's the one who gets to decide public policy. This is a public policy thing. This is not all like corruption of personal benefit that Nate is implying. This is a matter of saying the public policy I want to implement, I'm going to implement, and if this is the best way I can get it done, this is how I'm going to get it done. And that's not corruption.
That's not corruption. I agree with you.
And frankly, I think the term quid pro quo is ruined if you try applying to this type of situation where a person is trying to help the public benefit as he best sees fit.
Well, my response to that is not corruption because it depends on who's doing it. If it's a Democrat doing it, it's corruption. If the Republicans do it, it's not corruption. In this particular case, people, just imagine that the government is saying, they're saying we didn't even look at the evidence. We didn't look at the legal theories. They probably didn't even look at the documents. But we think these charges are so bad and so false and politically motivated, we're going to keep them over your head and reevaluate it after the election in November. But in that time frame, we want you to do exactly what we want you to do. Or guess what? These charges can come back up. Now, if I would agree with Danny and Joe, if they would have dropped these charges with prejudice, then I would have said, okay, they are doing a good thing. But to hold them over the man's head and then admit that they didn't even look at the documents, they didn't even look at the evidence, you know why? And you know why I think this is being defended? It's because it's Trump, and the morals and compasses and everything that I'm saying doesn't matter, right? The facts don't matter. Matter of fact, they put it in the damn document. It doesn't even matter. So yes, people, this is corruption at the highest extent. And you know why they're going to tell you it's not corruption? Because it's Trump doing it. That's the reason why. And that's the reason why we're going to limit it to personal benefit.
I have a question, you guys. Why can the state not bring? Why
right?
can't the state bring the charges, Nate?
Hmm?
Why can't the state bring these charges against him?
The state could bring the charges, but I think the state's corrupt too. I think the state's corrupt.
I mean, that's fine. So long as we're admitting that both, because that's the thing. The state really is the one who should be asserting interest in asserting jurisdiction in this case in the first place, because this is a violation of state law. And frankly, the type of corruption he was accused of being involved in the first place, pressuring the fire chief to go ahead and sign off on the construction of this Turkish center, right, downtown New York, so that he could get some kickbacks from the Turkish government. While there is an international element to this is very much a state's issue. And this implies that there was corruption in their election. I would think that the state would want to take over. So, that's where if we're balancing public interest here and we're looking at the whole case as a whole, outside of the facts, outside of the actual case, I would say that if the state were interested, if there was an actual case here, it would be the state who should be asserting jurisdiction and charging this mayor, not the DOJ. So either way,
there's no government coming after him because they want to punish him for speaking out against illegal migrants.
Right.
That's why. It's because Biden wanted to punish him, and it was Biden's DOJ.
And that's wrong. And that's wrong, right, Joe?
So
that was wrong. Hold on.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's a tale of two administrations, though, Joe.
Yeah,
it's kind of funny because you had the Biden administration. I think you're right that they pushed it harder because he talked against immigration. Absolutely. That's kind of corrupt, wasn't it? But now you have another administration who's saying, you know what, we're going to use this guy and we're going to use the previous guy's charges on him to keep him in line because he's our boy. But I'm sorry to say, but it is literally.
But he's not his boy. Hold on. He's still fighting back. That's the thing. I would agree with you guys. I would agree with both Eric and Nate. If it weren't for the fact that he's already fighting back against Donald Trump, clawing back $89 billion that was sent from FEMA to New York specifically to deal with the migrant crisis. So he's already fighting back. He's already talking shit about Donald Trump. So if Donald Trump really felt like he was getting his boy, right, and keeping him in, oh no, where did Nate go?
I probably accidentally hit the button.
Oh. If he felt like he was getting his boy,
Trump rally somewhere,
he would actually utilize that power against him now and put the pressure on him now. If the whole goal of doing this was truly quid pro quo.
Here's my thing.
I'm going to tell you.
I still
the
say
distinction, Eric. I'll answer your question on the
prejudice.
distinction. I'll answer your question on the distinction between him being charged by Biden versus Trump letting him go. And that is Biden is saying, I want to punish you personally because of what you did. My objective is to punish you personally because of what you did. I'm angry at you, so I want to punish you personally. That is now using the Justice Department for his own personal vendetta. So that's why that smells like corruption. When the objective is to benefit the public policy and the public society, and there's literally zero benefit to Trump personally. This is not like Trump came to him and said, "Hey, I want to build a new hotel. I want you to approve the permits, and that's why, and you're going to let the deal off." That would be corruption. If he did something like that, where he's benefiting himself personally, that's where you have corruption. How Nate can have the audacity to label it as corruption at the highest level when there's no personal benefit.
I don't understand.
Trump, Trump individually.
Tell me why does it have to be personal? That because I've never ever heard that corruption has to benefit a person personally. It could be an organization that they're part of. It could be there could be a million things.
The reason why, Eric, think about it this way. Think about a person in power who's doing a net benefit for the social good, and they're utilizing the same mechanisms to create a social good outcome. We wouldn't call that corruption. We'd call that political process.
Well, hold on.
Well,
hold on. Let me finish this thread because and no, I definitely want to go with Danny because what if your view, because for example, you could use a counter argument that that woke is a wonderful thing, and when they're doing a corruption and pushing people to push their woke agenda, then are they not doing it for the quote public good?
They can absolutely argue that. Yes, they can absolutely argue that, and they have successfully argued that for the last 4 years. The difference is whether or not you're doing it for the benefit of the public good at zero benefit to yourself. That's the question. So hold on. So what I mean by this is when the Democrats are pushing that agenda, but they also are benefiting themselves, ingratiating themselves and their families and their best friends, and they're all receiving grant money all off the side while they're pushing this agenda. That's very different than someone who has nothing to lose, someone who's going to implement it anyway, but who's utilizing the political process to grease the wheels and to help aid that process to go smoother. Now, that's very different and to no benefit to themselves. What does Trump have to benefit to Joe's point?
Biden have to benefit by doing it to Adams. Now, I don't like Biden. Just to clarify,
he has a lot.
What did he? Because Biden's policy was to bring in every illegal he could find. Hey, fly him in, bring him here.
And the Democrats were on board because if they weren't, they wouldn't.
That was his public policy, and he targeted Eric Adams to the greater good using the exact same logic, Joe. So it wasn't personal. So if
Oh,
you think
no,
this came
no.
up
It
from
was
one side-
personal. Hold on, Eric. Hold on. You are completely neglecting every single contract the Bidens had internationally, every single grant that they benefited from personally. You're forgetting that he had the benefit of protecting his family from criminal charges at the time. He had the benefit of being able to defend a lot of criminal activity his son was involved in personally.
Okay, stop.
Overseas
I know.
international.
Hold on.
You guys have to
No,
understand.
that's not fair. That's not
This
fair
isn't
because
just
You're
a
just bringing in
issue.
all corruption.
No. You're spreading too wide of a scope here. I'm talking about one particular.
we're talking about
policy.
because it was
Hold
happening
on.
in every
Stop.
single state.
Can you point out that Biden got a dime over illegal immigration in a grant or something personally? Can you do that? And if you can't, then you're bringing all the other corruption, which he absolutely did do. There's no question there.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about a very targeted, specific apples
You want
to
to talk
apples
about
policy.
quid pro quo, Eric? You want to talk about quid pro quo? How do you think Biden had all that money to campaign in the first place? Where do you think that money comes from?
The illegals gave
If
it
you're
to him?
pushing for illegal
I don't know.
immigration,
The
if you're
illegals-
pushing
Danny.
for open borders,
Yeah.
and you have the Open Border Society, a Soros-funded society that is pushing for open borders, and they are wanting to make sure that that's implemented in every single state, and they come to you and they say, hey, we're happy to fund your campaign, but you need to implement this in every state. And it's not just at a Biden level. We're talking at a DA level is what we're now finding out through these USAID disclosures, that almost every single DA in every single metropolitan city wasn't just being pressured by the Soros Foundation, by Act Blue, but specifically by organizations that were being funded by our own tax dollars. By our own
I know
Well,
about
well,
you said we could talk you said all day. We could talk
Well,
Elon Musk all day. We could talk all that. But again, I'm getting very, very specific because I think you're casting a net with the absolute corruption where you have Hunter Biden and Burisma.
Yeah, this is all corrupt.
This is all absolutely true. Complete corruption. But don't tell me that the open borders policy necessarily is always a direct payoff. These people are freaking
What's
nuts.
the payoff
Some
to
of
the
them are
nation?
nuts.
What's the net social good to the national interest? Where's the national interest there?
Okay,
Eric?
They would say
disagree.
bring
I
in
disagree,
the
but they will
illegals.
say that it's incredibly important for labor and for big business, and there's a lot of corporate interests who are happy to bring in the cheap ass labor, which
Show
steals
me
jobs
the
from
evidence for
Americans.
that, and I will get on board with saying that that is not corruption on its face.
Well, let me just respond to Joe's point and to Danny's point. Number one, we're saying in one instance, Joe Biden bringing the charges against Eric Adam because Eric Adam wasn't doing what he needed to do with the illegals. Essentially flipped, said, hey, Trump's plan is with and doing this, and that's why he was charged. Now, and we're saying that was corruption, right? Now, Danny's saying
vendetta.
No, we're saying that's a personal vendetta,
Personal
corruption,
vendetta,
right?
corruption.
Corruption, personal vendetta, because he didn't follow the policy, right? He wasn't doing his policy meetings. And Biden believed that his policy was best for the country. Now, we flip it. Now we have Eric Adams, those same charges. Trump's team says, we're not even looking at the evidence, nothing. We're going to now take those charges and hold them against you. And now we want you to do what we said do instead of doing what Biden says do. And then we may drop the charges later. So in both instances, both people, Biden didn't have a personal benefit. Trump didn't have a personal benefit. But one thing, but hold on, let me finish. There wasn't any personal benefit to Biden. There wasn't any personal benefit to Trump, right? But because they were both pushing for their policies. And now what you'll see is that because it's Biden, the corruption is because it's Trump. And now, Joe, since you're adding this personal vendetta piece in there, I think that's just bull crap because obviously you got to save the argument. Now, for Danny's argument, I'll say this, Danny, you've just made it extremely broad. You're now bringing corruption from Joe Biden, from this. The point here is specific. We're talking about Mayor Adams, and in one instance, they put political pressure on him to get him to do the anti-immigration stuff, and on the other instance, they're putting political pressure on him to do the exact reverse. They're both the same situations, and we can pretend that there are these other things, but if you just look at it for what it is, both sides are the same. So if you call one side corrupt and not the other side corrupt, that's just because of politics. That's not because of the facts. And I'm going to be very clear. I would agree with you both, but in the document that they put out, they said, we don't give a damn about the evidence. We don't give a damn about the facts nor the legal theory. Only thing we give a damn about is him doing what we want him to do. And guess what? We can come back right after the election.
Nate, do you think there's a difference between pursuing charges and dropping charges when it comes to corruption? So what I mean by that is in this case, Mayor Nick Adams, Mayor Adams had to be afraid for,
He looks a little bit
not
like
the
Nick Adams.
potential
He
of
does look at
litigation, but indefinite litigation, potentially indefinite litigation that would prevent him from being able to run again. Do you think that's different than dropping these charges on the basis of knowing that this was a politically motivated case?
But they didn't do it with
They
prejudice.
did.
If they did it with prejudice, the whole argument.
If they would have done it with prejudice, your argument is if they would have done it with prejudice, not corrupt, but because they did it without.
If
Right,
they dropped
because
it with,
I think they would be.
Yes.
If they did it with prejudice, they would be saying
There's
exactly what you said. This was a political prosecution. We don't believe in it. We're dropping it with prejudice. Period.
that
But the
shuts
hanging
everything
it
up.
over his head, like, but you
But
better,
what
because if no, you're saying that they're garbage political prosecution charges. They shouldn't be hanging over the guy's head. The
But
poor
what if
dude has been
they're-
persecuted long enough. Let him go.
So what if there are charges though that are spurious, that are connected to these, that come up later, that are very legitimate, that the DOJ has to investigate by virtue of their doing their jobs?
Well, we
that's
can't have it
kind
both
of-
ways,
well,
though, right?
That could be anybody. I mean, I might
Yeah.
be doing something tomorrow.
I'm just saying, I think that
so-
you're attributing to malice what could be attributed to just basic practice, where it's saying, hey, look, right now we're going to drop it because as far as we can tell, this is a political case.
But
We're not
they
going to
also
even look
said-
at it.
But,
But
they also said,
but we
want
could be
him to
wrong,
play
and there
ball
could
with
be
us."
something more serious here. But for right now, there's no reason to pursue charges against you.
But they wrote in the thing itself but they want him to play ball. We want him to work for us.
Well,
I
he
mean,
has to play
yeah.
ball anyway, though, Eric.
Well,
He
not,
has
not
to play ball
necessarily.
anyway.
Well, then
Yes,
what- then-
absolutely necessarily.
Yeah, because that's part of the corruption. That's the quid pro quo, right?
No,
You
it's not.
absolutely
It's part
necessarily
of
need to do
the
what we need you to
supremacy
do.
But
clause.
that's
Right?
so when
Hey,
someone
Sean. No, hold on. Sean gets to go.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I got here late, guys. Sorry. No, the only thing that I think gives any question to whether or not Eric Adams is getting a fair shake by the DOJ is in Email Bo's letter, he mentions the issue of there was some sort of, it sounds like there is an allegation of some hinky business with a proffer. But other than that, he took money from Turkey. He took money from the Turkish government. He took money without doing FARA, and I'm sure that maybe they were going to do a superseding indictment. Who knows? But yes, just the idea they're dismissing it, because he's a good guy. I mean, no. The fact that Eric Adams was doing all this and Biden decided not to indict him because he was playing along, that doesn't make what he did any less worse. So if it's there and he did it, he should be dealing with it. So this idea of, we're going to squeeze him now to find where the bodies are buried. Oh, well, you can do that and keep the case pending. And then at that point, okay, fine. He pleads guilty to FARA. By the way, he helped us out and turned over a lot of people. Great. But to do this dismissal and then if you do what we want later, we'll just, is it going to go away? No.
So then they're legitimate charges.
Well,
and
if you
not
read the letter,
politically
if you read the
motivated.
letter that Emil Bove sent
No.
back,
Mhm.
if you read the letter that Emil Bove sent back,
Yes.
when he was yelling at Danielle Sassoon and responding to her and telling her, "Yeah, we accept your resignation. Clear your desk and make sure you don't torch anything." So
What else did he say? Did
No,
he say
they
that
can
she was gonna
fire her. They have every
investigate it?
right to fire her. I'm
Well,
not saying they don't.
she said, "I'm not doing this. If you're gonna make me do it,
Yeah,
I'm
and I don't
resigning it.
I don't
I'm
blame her for
resigning."
not
And he said, "We
doing it.
accept your resignation." And this actually leads us into, I think we've all expressed our points for the most part as to where we're coming from. But there's one issue that relates to this that I don't think we've really hit on, which is do you think that Danielle Sassoon resigning is nobility, or is that betrayal of her oath that she has to uphold the Constitution, and her duty is to follow the marching orders of what the DOJ tells her? And that's my question, because she's painting as if I'm being very noble and I'm trying and I'm not doing this. And my question is, and Emil Bove is like, you have marching orders. You don't get to set public policy. Public policy is being set
and
by
that's fine.
She swear her oath to. I took an oath when I was
uphold
in
the
the military.
Constitution.
Oh, Joe,
Exactly.
yes.
So if she reads the Constitution and in her heart and soul is saying this is unconstitutional, what's happening here, that is her first loyalty.
I don't think she's
Did she
incorrect. Say it's
No,
unconstitutional, because I don't
it's
think
not-
she did.
Joe,
I don't think she did.
Joe, it's not an issue of constitutionality. The president can do it. Is it ethical? No, I don't think this was ethical. There's
So
a
does
lot
that
of
mean
things Trump's
if
done.
we go to
This is not
war and
ethical.
when a soldier says, I don't think this war is ethical, that's totally fine for him to just say, I'm ignoring all the orders from my commanding officer because
they're
She
required
resigns.
to,
She
as a
should
matter of fact.
resign.
So,
Yeah, if
no,
it's
you,
unlawful,
you will go to
this
prison
is
if you
not-
go. Hold on,
no,
I'm a
this
soldier.
is-
I'm jumping in on this
Yeah.
one, Joe, because
no, I'm
you had
asking.
literally massacres in Vietnam with
Yes.
people
My
following
Lai.
orders. My lie,
Yeah.
and they went to freaking prison, and they needed to go to prison.
Mhm.
Yep.
Soldiers who say I will not follow that unlawful order can absolutely say no.
Yes. And Joe,
If
this
it's
is not that
unlawful.
situation.
That's if it's
though.
unlawful.
It's okay. It's lawful. Is it within the Constitution? Yes. Is it ethical? No.
And mind
So
you,
it's
I
lawful,
also-
but
wait,
it's
wait,
I
we
wrong.
think
also
you're
wanna
quitting
make- I
is
wanna- I wanna
ethical,
but
mention
it's
the
awful.
clowns
I mean,
in the chat.
It's lawful, but it's awful.
This was Scalia's clerk. These are
Actually-
a lot of these are some of the most conservative lawyers in that
Yes.
department that
He
are
actually
saying,
threw
"We don't wanna-
Scalia back at her.
we
He
won't
threw
even do
Scalia
it."
back at her.
Which
So
is
Scalia
true,
says
but-
you're wrong.
But I want to be very clear.
You
The
need to
reason
read
why
that letter.
she is
You
not
need
the
to read that
only
letter
one.
from
There
Emil
are
Bowes back
there are
to her.
6 prosecutors. So they went through. They said, "We want you to do it." She resigned rather than do something that she believes was unethical. And now they're on number 6. 6 of the prosecutors that they asked for, and they're afraid that that they ask any more of them, they would lose because they don't want to lose everybody.
And I
The
circle back to
I'm
my
okay with
question.
them losing
Unethical.
everybody.
We all know this is unethical, but
Why
obviously-
can't he do it
I don't think
himself?
it's unethical.
If he is so
Am I
certain,
the only one
Joe,
who thinks
No,
it's
I'm
fine
with
for
you.
an attorney to
I'm
resign
totally with
because
you.
they're morally opposed to something? I mean,
Well, she
I'm
believes it's
okay with
unethical.
it. I'm going to be honest. It's for the same reason I always tell DAs: if you have a problem with the death penalty, don't run for office. Because if in your jurisdiction it's legal, that's part of your job. And if you can't do the job, then you need to resign. And that's what she's saying. She's saying,
Exactly.
I can't do this job the way that you're telling and instructing, and what the job description was is no longer what it is. I'm out. I'm fine with that.
And what I don't really get is, there was a super chat from Neocon Sitch earlier where he said, "Sorry for address. How is this different from common plea of immunity deal? You help us with an alternative prosecution, in this case immigration, and we'll go light or give you immunity. Isn't this commonplace?" And I don't really understand the distinction. I haven't heard Eric or Nate explain what the distinction is.
In other words, you're saying this is like you're saying this is a elaborate plea agreement. You do this under and
that doesn't
will file charges.
And
How
here's
is
the
that-
thing, though, Joe.
how-
I was going to say, Nate, and you'll probably agree with me on this. That doesn't mean it's not unethical. That doesn't mean this isn't the right way to do it. That you can cut a deal with a murder. You can cut a deal with a drug dealer to turn over the rest of his drug dealer friends.
If
You can
Danielle
argue
Sassoon
that's not-
herself had come up with this deal, would anyone have said it's unethical? The only reason people are claiming it's unethical is because Danielle Sassoon said, "I don't like the ethics, I disagree with this," and you can question whether her motivation is that she doesn't
Joe,
like the
can I
policy
answer
in
your
general.
question?
If she came
that
up
you
with it,
asked?
yes, this would be unethical still.
Yes.
Can I answer your question? Why I think it's different than that super chat?
Please
Because
do.
you asked. And
No, I want
okay.
your answer. I want your answer. It wasn't rhetorical.
Okay, because I think that a plea deal is directly on point. Like if somebody does a crime,
Mhm.
and as part of their sentence, they are reporting, whatever, telling on their cohorts or revealing evidence directly related to the crime. This is getting a little bit
How does
different.
that change it? How does that change
Well,
it?
that's what I'm trying to get to. Just let me go. I'm going to land the plane. That's something Joe says. Just give me time. It's a long runway.
Go for it.
Okay. This is not directly on point with this. This is saying, hey, you know what? We need some help with something else over here that has zero to do with the case that he's being charged for.
Yes.
It's saying, oh, you know what? Hey, you robbed my store, but you have a cousin who fixes bathrooms. So why don't you remodel my bathroom, and I'll go ahead and look at my charges here. It's a little bit different because it's not on
personal
point.
benefit. That's a personal benefit. If let's say they say instead of you actually serving, instead of you actually going to jail, I want you to do community service. Is that quid pro quo? Is that corruption? Let's say I don't.
But isn't community service actually a sentence? Isn't that considered a punitive thing?
Yeah, but
it's punitive,
you go to
right?
jail for
It is
20 years.
punitive for that person. They've got their time taken away.
Instead
So
of you rotting for 20 years, I want you to spend that. I want you to spend X number of weeks, months, years, doing something that you're uniquely situated to do to benefit the community. So are you telling me that that's corruption?
I would
for the society.
Hold on, but just to respond to that point, Joe. Obviously I know you know the Constitution, and I don't want to bring up the 10th Amendment and commandeering, for instance, but it is illegal for federal government to commandeer state officials, to force them to institute federal law without them willing to do it, without them wanting to do it. So what you're essentially saying is that if the federal government can charge, let's say, the governor of a state and say, we want you to do this particular part, we want you to do this particular thing, enforce our immigration laws, and to get him to play ball, he has to do what they say. Well, now you're talking about maybe a violation of the 10th Amendment, because now you're talking about the state officials being commandeered under threat of criminal penalty. So that's essentially what you're putting forward. That the federal government can take a state official, put bogus charges, because you said the charges are likely bogus, and then force them to do what they want them to do. Is that what you're laying out?
I don't recall saying that the charges are likely bogus. Frankly,
you said they were corrupted.
I thought, as Danny pointed out, the timing of it, and Emil both pointed this out in his letter to her also, the fact that this became so rushed, and there was an ongoing investigation on and on and on, and then as soon as he made that statement, within weeks he was indicted, and this whole thing broke at the timing that was perfect to destroy his re-election run for mayor in New York.
Okay,
so
don't. But
you're describing as far as commandeering, that would be true. If it'd be commandeering if Trump is the one who indicted him and then said, I'll let you go if you do my bidding. But when someone else does it and they have their own personal vendetta that they're trying to score, and he says, I will now come in and save you from this if in fact you actually do this, that's the same thing as rolling over as rolling someone over to testify against someone else.
Joe,
we're having them do community service.
But Joe, I don't think he's saying that.
The reason why, Joe, that's different, Joe, is because that's a private individual in private matters. We're talking about a public official, and that you want them to change their public policy at the city level. So just let me be very clear what we've heard so far. We heard that these charges were likely political, were likely bogus, were likely, even though sometimes we said maybe a little bit. Essentially,
I didn't say
charges.
That.
But hold on.
That?
Earlier,
you're putting words in my mouth. I never said.
I'm just saying earlier, it was very clear that people were saying these charges were likely bogus and blah, 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 and there was a political motivation behind them. But so I'm saying, under Joe's argument, that even if the charges were bogus, they're able to go into a place, let's say like the state of Florida, hold that governor up on bogus charges, which may be good or may not be good, and then say, well, you know what, we'll drop the charges temporarily while you're running for election. And if you don't do what we tell you to do, those charges can come back. And we're saying we're okay with that. That I think is commandeering. That I think is not appropriate to establish public policy. And it seems like if we're okay with that, I'm saying I respectfully disagree and believe that's unethical. And I think that's why all of these people are resigning, because that is a situation we find ourselves in.
I think it's ethical. I think people are resigning because they got in the kitchen, can't take the heat, don't like the games that are natural to play. And you know what? I think that it's quid pro quo if this is, we will drop these charges with prejudice if you do this. Here, I think this is basically saying, look, we understand this is politically motivated. We're gonna drop them. If it turns out that there's something here later on, obviously another administration or even us later on can bring it up. I don't see it as quid pro quo. I think if they wanted to continue with the charges, I think if they were politically motivated, they would drop them with prejudice. They would take a heavy look at these charges and say, hey, you know what? I looked at it. I looked at the evidence, and we can continue this path, and you can go ahead and eat your prosecution. And you can fight this all the way into election season, or we can play ball and be friends. And we're going to go ahead and drop this with prejudice. And you do exactly what we say when it comes to immigration. That to me is quid pro quo.
Well,
I think here they're just acknowledging, hey, you were targeted. We're going to move on.
Danny, I'm confused by that because if you drop the charges with prejudice, saying that you're going to do something for me later, well, he doesn't have to do anything later. There's something held over their head. The situation he's in right now is there is literally something over his head that can be brought up at any point.
Eric, there's more over his head than just these things. I guarantee you a quick perusal of these charges, you start looking into the actual evidence besides, and that's just what they were able to uncover. There was more that they were in discovery phase still. They were still going after him. They weren't, this wasn't a closed and shut case. Like there wasn't other charges that could have been brought and should have been brought.
It's not just political prosecution. It's a legitimate prosecution, you're saying.
I'm saying it could be a legitimate prosecution. And I think that's what Trump is saying too. This could be a legitimate prosecution.
Let me read the second part. Second, the pending prosecution has unduly restricted Mayor Adams' ability to devote full attention and resources to illegal immigration and violent crime that escalated under the policies of the president. We're particularly concerned about the impact of his ability to support critical ongoing federal efforts to protect American people from disaster because of lawful immigration as described in executive order. This whole last paragraph is saying this is what Adams is going to do. This doesn't have to be in there. This does not have to be in there. The part of them not looking at the evidence doesn't have to be in there, right? They could have said we're going to reevaluate in a couple of months. None of this has to be in there.
Yes, it didn't have to be.
This is telling him directly, your ass is mine. There is nothing else you can do. And if you don't play by with these rules, that's why he's on Fox News with Holman saying the same thing. Now I understand we don't want to steer this in the face, but that none of this has to be in this document. It's in there.
But Mayor Adams wants to comply with Trump. He wants to comply. That's what he was doing in the first place. That's what targeted.
He wasn't doing it.
Why are you putting it in the letter?
He can't handle taking on these open border policies. That's the whole reason that this was targeted against him.
So why write it in the letter?
The DOJ in the first place.
Why is it in that letter, Danny? Why?
Because they're explaining it to the public, Nate.
That's not public consumption. This is a memo going through the DOJ. If they could release
and we don't think it would be leaked.
Well, I understand, but they could release a press release if they wanted to do that. Do they really need to tell Danielle?
I think that this was a clever way of getting across the intent of what they were doing. I think if they had the intent to do it any other way, they would have done it through back channels. They would have gone and done an actual quid pro quo. And I think that would have hurt Trump in the long run. This is a smart way of basically legally handling the situation.
This is a pretty moronic way of handling it. I think
I strongly disagree. I think that the people who are quitting saying, "Oh, this is immoral," I strongly disagree with them. But I'm glad they're quitting.
You know what? I will tell you. The screen I'm sharing over here. This is from the letter of Emil Bove responding to Danielle Sassoon, where he says presidents frequently make policy decisions. Justice Department is charged with implementing. It was a responsibility of the department and your office to execute it, regardless of anyone's personal views. That was your job here. You all violate your oaths by failing to do it. In no valid sense, you uphold the Constitution by disobeying direct orders, implementing the policy of a duly elected president, and anyone romanticizing. So
nobody's disagreeing. Nobody's not saying they can't do this.
No, I don't.
It's whether it's right.
No. They were talking about whether it's right for her to say, "I'm not going to."
Yeah, she could say, "I don't agree with it," and she quit.
And
there we go. I mean, that's
an amendment.
Okay, but the point being, I mean, I'll share with you a link to this letter because this letter that he responded back was actually very powerful. It was an 8-page letter that he sent back.
I read it last night. It is interesting. Yeah. I'm just trying to say, it's kind of like because people bringing up Biden giving the pardons. You could say they're corrupt. You could say whatever you want about him, right or wrong. He's allowed to do it. That doesn't mean just because you're allowed to do it, your actions are justified or righteous. You could do a lot of things. That doesn't mean they're good.
You could say the same thing about the Genesis here. That let's because I assume he committed the crimes. I assume he committed the crimes with Turkey and stuff like that. But they specifically brought the charges because they could and because they wanted to use it
and Eric Adams fucked around. I'm sorry, Eric. I didn't mean to swear, but Eric Adams screwed around here. He was in bed with some scummy people and he was doing dirt. And that's the problem when you do dirt with a bunch of scumbags around you. When you don't do what they want, they come down on you. That's the reason why you don't do, if you're going to be don't do crooked stuff and people can't bust you. Like the idea of he was just, Eric's like, I was just minding my business. Like I was just walking home and they arrested me. It's like, no, he was taking bribes. He was doing illegal stuff. And now he's like, oh, what do you mean? You guys can charge me for it? Like, no, that's what you get. That's what you get. So, like, this isn't shock Pikachu Faceville. Like, this is what happens. He broke the law, and he's dealing with it. Like I said, I don't agree with this one. A lot of the other stuff Trump's done so far, 100% great.
Oh,
it's awesome.
fantastic.
This is kind of hard garbage.
And Danny, I'm going to push back really hard. I have to on that whole. He was sending that letter as a signal to the public. Oh, hell no. There are too many people who are saying this doesn't look right. This is not. We're talking about Trump fans here who are saying, yeah, this is just, it feels a little bit uncomfortable. It feels a little Saturday Night Massacre-y. And when you have Doge and you have Elon Musk and you have all this great transparency and everything going on, I don't think this is the best signal to put out, because he's complaining about lawfare and he's complaining about, persecution and all that. And I do feel like if they really believe that, then drop a pardon or drop all the charges and move on. Because
what happens if he doesn't comply? What do you do then?
If he doesn't,
then tough shit. He doesn't comply.
So I thought you said he was. I thought you said he was wrongfully prosecuted. So you should be fine.
No one is saying he's wrongfully prosecuted. No one is saying that.
Eric,
what we're saying is that
the administration's saying that it was unfair.
No,
we're saying the timing taints the prosecution.
We're saying that the timing is what taints it, that he was politically prosecuted. That's very different. When you have targeted prosecutions, when everyone is breaking the law, and you are specifically targeting individuals on a political basis because you're pissed off that they won't do what you want, that is a targeted prosecution. And that is what he has specifically written in his own executive order that he's trying to undo, that the DOJ was being used and the FBI was being used to enact these political
prosecutions. But this one's literally supported by law.
I am completely comfortable with this decision, because to me it's in line with what he's already enacting nationwide. But can we move? Can we agree to disagree and move on?
We're going to disagree, but I would say you guys would agree, though, if this was dismissed with prejudice, this would taste a lot better for everybody.
Not for me. It would taste worse.
Yes, it would. Like, if you're going to be about it, get it done.
No, that would taste way worse.
I still like that would make a lot. That would be a lot more straight of an answer to this.
I don't really understand why that changes the parameter of it.
Well, I also want to see if everybody around him still gets persecuted or prosecuted. You choose. If they all get convicted and he's just kind of floating out, then that's an interesting one too.
Some of the people around him, in my opinion, do deserve to be prosecuted and investigated, but I think it's the wrong body. I think the state needs to do it.
Oh, well, maybe they still will. Who knows?
That's a good point, Dan.
Because Hochul is pretty pissed off. All right, so let me see. I know we had a couple other things lined up. I knew this one might bring some heat. Okay, let's go on to a new law in Ohio. We've got Sean from Ohio here. There's a new act that
can you move me to the corner before we proceed with this one?
No, this is an important part to discuss a corruption within a state and
the corruption of the soul.
Corruption and conception in one shot here. We have Conception Begins at Erection Act in Ohio. So, Sean, being your state.
Yes, it's the war on gooning, chat. We're not allowing this anymore. This is just theatrics. There's a similar bill in Mississippi that's been proposed, and there's monetary fines, and yes, it's cheeky and it's it sounds hilarious, and that's really where it's going to end. As much as some people out there might think gooning is bad, and they want to encourage everybody to. There's just so many jokes and things you could say here that are appropriate, but there's all kinds of things, though. When we talked about this last night, like you wake up in the morning and it happens while you're sleeping. Have you broken the law? Because you could say, like, it wasn't intentional. I didn't mean to do it. My biology did it. Like, there's so many issues with this. If they actually made this a law, how would this work? How would they enforce it? And, that said, though, you'll be able to take, Ohio will be able to pay off its any debts it may incur very, very quickly if they start trying to find people in the state. I can tell you that much.
So who's going to be on the enforcement?
Well, that's the other thing. It's going to be the, it's the gooning police. We're here, sir. Show us your hands.
Well, wait a minute. It's not only
everywhere.
gooning, Sean, because there are acts that take place between consenting adults that do not involve conception. It could.
Yeah.
I think the perfect response.
So would both people be tried in this case if they were, performing an act that was to achieve this result and not reproduction?
Yeah. Conspiracy.
I think the perfect response is great. Is a great idea, but impractical to execute.
Yes, it'd be a conspiracy there, and like you'd have to do that, and it's just they're just.
How do you enforce that too?
That's why I said
you couldn't. It's never meant to go anywhere. They're just trying to make a point, and they think they're being cute, but all they do is beclown themselves by doing this.
I for one support it. As a Republican, Democrats, please try and outlaw gooning. I think that's great. You know what? I support you in this effort. Go for it. Go state to state and tell men that they cannot receive or is it that they can't be erect, or is it that they can't?
No, it cannot have an emission without a purpose.
You can't have fireman time, is what you can't have little fireman time.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, go for it, Dems. Please keep this up.
By the way, on that same note, I thought
based on the size of the offense.
I thought they liked condoms. So technically, every time somebody used a condom, they'd be breaking that law, correct?
I would assume
that would actually be a pretty good point. Yeah,
it's the act of the arousal, right? That's being criminalized here.
Well, no, it's the
the
completion has to result in.
Oh, it has to complete.
You got to get it done.
I guess they're in favor of clean completion.
Oh, so I guess then the next step is going to be like we shouldn't allow people. We should have red flag laws for buying condoms. So
yes,
yes.
If you follow that path, technically, yes.
They should call this the blue balls law. That's what that's called. You get right to the point, but don't let.
They're gonna make everyone suffer. That's
red flag laws
the law
for blue
does.
balls.
We're tailing our freedom. The right to keep and bear, the right to goon and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Oh my God! Who are these Republicans or Democrats who are bringing?
They're Democrats. They're Democrats.
You know what? That's one thing.
They try and say that conception doesn't happen when by fertilization, so that's why they're.
I will say this. I think it's whoever's doing the legal strategies, not the legal strategies, the political strategies on the right are brilliant, because it seems like what Trump and his team does is take the issues that 90% of the world agrees with, and then says it, and then the Democrats, like for instance with USAID. There's nobody on the planet who doesn't think that we should be spending $1.5 million for transgender operations in Cuba or whatever. But Trump says, let's find it. And then the Democrats jump, oh, this is so wrong. And he pushes them so far left that even these little laws like this, it shows you that they are not the common sense people anymore. It's like they've essentially forced common sense onto the Republicans, and they're eating their behinds alive. So
I agree.
Speaking of which, did you guys expect?
This chat, I've got to address it because it's a good point. Does this mean we'd have to convict doctors for performing vasectomies? Because technically,
there's
got to be exceptions.
We're gonna have the back alley vasectomies with coat hangers now. No, it's gonna be tough here, Chad. It's gonna be like it's gonna be like la resistance. You're resisting.
Hey, we can get the women too. Get their tube side. Lock them up.
Imagine somebody like Mike DeWine checking to make sure you're not doing this.
Wait, this doesn't include women. I thought it.
No, because it's got to be conception. So that would be a conspiracy to stop that conception. Every sperm is sacred here. Every sperm.
Oh, you're saying sacred. If women indulged this?
Well, no, I'm saying that, okay, women could be doing an act with a male that does not involve.
No, but women could do the act on themselves, and it would not be criminalized.
Right.
Correct.
Trans women,
right. That's all I care about.
You
guys enjoy this.
Are they women? Are they not women in this situation?
Yeah. Oh yeah, good point. Good point. Okay.
It does seem like it's a sexist law. Did you guys see that USAID was paying off $9 million to Reuters for large scale public disinformation?
They were paying
Reuters or was it Thomson
our
Reuters?
local Salt Lake Tribune.
What?
Everybody.
They were paying the local Salt Lake Tribune.
$9 million. The tag says for large-scale public disinformation, literally paying for propaganda for propaganda lies.
I did not see that one.
Reuters is an international wire. It's not completely surprising that would fall under espionage and propaganda. Now they're probably doing it internally too, which is even worse. But you know, the sad part is that some of these programs, and this will be a controversial opinion, some of these programs are really not technically writing a trans comic book. It's funding an operation within a country.
It's a black
you have
op.
people who have a sense of humor who are saying, oh, it's really a tranny comic book. But what's so funny about it is they're putting DEI labels on things that may be just typical black ops operations, but they can't exactly undo it, because now we're looking at it and say, well, wait a minute, you said that you're funding this Serbian thing. And they're kind of stuck and screwed with some of the stuff, which I find hilarious.
I just want you guys are gonna love this. Just indulge me for 60 seconds. Share the screen here, okay? You're gonna love this. You sharing it?
Oh, where? Okay, hold on. There's Nate. Okay, there you go.
So this is the timeline of events that happen. Reuters puts out an article, which is how Musk's Doge cuts based more on political ideology than real cost savings so far. That's step one. Step two was Elon saying, I wonder how much money Reuters is getting from the government. Let's find out. Step three is Doge paid Reuters $9 million for a social engineering program. And here's the ticket, which on the bottom corner here says $9 million for active social engineering to the active social engineering defense for large scale social deception. That's what they're this is such an amazing, it's true, we're living in such an amazing timeline now.
That's why you said got picked, Joe, because remember, I believe Musk has talked about it, when you started looking around saying, okay, everybody turn in your books, we want to know where you're spending, and you said was, hey, shove it up your ass, we're not giving you a damn thing. And he said, what is you said anyway? Yeah, I mean, it literally is that kind of timeline.
They tell on themselves.
Well, by the way, that's one thing I can say, and maybe we could talk about it. These judges who are coming up and ruling against the administration, in a funny way, are they not actually falling into plan? Like, if you want to identify all of the problem judges, they're showing themselves.
Yeah, but that would require Republicans with balls who are going to actually impeach them, and that's not going to happen.
Well, it doesn't matter because you can't do anything without the Senate anyway. So impeach away, they'll never be convicted. It will be humiliating to the publicly, sure, maybe.
Yeah,
but you can't get them out of office because we don't have the numbers.
Yeah, and that kind of cheapens the impeachment thing, because there's only been a handful of judges that have been impeached, and you'll turn it into what happened to Trump. Well, Trump's been impeached twice, like. So everybody's like, okay, yeah, big whoop. This was all. What's that?
There's new papers already drawn up.
Yeah, there's only two. What's impeachment 7 through 25 at this point. But that's the point. It's cheapened now. Nobody's like, oh, he's been impeached. Everybody's like, okay, great. He's probably going to get impeached again. Oh well. Ooh. For these judges, more importantly though, and I talked with Joe about this. No, we're literally watching the judiciary slit its own throat, integrity-wise, going forward.
Yep.
They're losing. They're going to lose their credibility. You see, my dogs agree. They're mad about these judges ruining it. And the Supreme Court, like, we're going to have a big Article 2 showdown this year because neither side's going to back down from this, and something's going to have to move. And is the Supreme Court really going to side with some district court judges over the president of the United States? And I don't think they're willing to do that.
And sticking with the law, another topic that Sean and I were talking about, I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel.
I want to know what Danny's sharing.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to share this really quick to your point, Joe. The fact that Reuters is literally getting paid for disinformation. I think it's important to note that a lot of those funds are coming back here to the United States. And I thought that this was very interesting.
Look, let me tell you something. I'll take a bit of umbrage here. I'll speak on behalf of my colleagues. I think I can say we are all willing to work with anyone who's serious about doing the work of censoring the American people and advancing progress.
What?
But they are not serious.
She's just an idiot.
She's saying it out loud.
That's all.
Unironically
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
That's what happens when you
contradictory
wear the
statement.
Klaus Schwab outfit of evil.
Well, yeah, she looks like
She
she borrowed
doesn't
that
Sith Lord
from,
outfit.
like from the set of
She
Star
forgot her
Wars.
clown wig.
Yeah.
It's a clown wig.
There's a
The
First
Obi-Wan wore
Amendment
that
that
in
says you can't do that.
Phantom Menace.
I want to add something Sean and I were talking about that we'll hear from the rest of the panel, which is this notion of a district court judge being empowered to pass a TRO that impacts national policy. So now you have a you have a TRO that comes out of the District of Rhode Island. Josh Shapiro files a complaint against Trump saying, hey, you're holding up the money for our mines that are supposed to be coming to support the Pennsylvania mines. Do you guys think that there's some sort of jurisdictional issue with the idea of a district court judge in Rhode Island? And we can get into him, but I don't, it's the politics behind it, but we don't need to.
Sure.
Yeah, we don't need to get into him. But the point being, do you think that there's some sort of legal issue with the ability of a district court judge from Rhode Island to basically compel Trump to pay money to Pennsylvania?
Question
Or
on that.
not even Pennsylvania, but a Pennsylvania organization.
Help me understand though, real quickly, the whole TRO thing, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here. Now, I find it really troubling that some lower level judge, not the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court did it, I'd be like, okay, equal branch of government and a collision, right? The TRO though, is it the intention like for 48 hours, just do nothing? So nothing changes any direction, and then everybody can go in and present their case? Or is it weaponized? Because if it is saying, freeze the playing field, it's Saturday night, such and such happened, we're just going to stop everything right here to keep all the facts together, that would seem to not be as irresponsible. But one judge, from what I understand, said, stop everything and shred everything that you have so far, which I think is now going too far. So am I misinterpreting TROs and intent and what the judge is doing and not doing?
It depends, because we do see cases like, especially now we're seeing like with gun cases, for example, Eric, the issue with like the ATF doing its pistol brace rule. That got enjoined at the nationwide level by district court. Okay. There's other cases like that where it's going on, or like there's gun cases. For example, these judges will invalidate a state's, they're invalidating a federal thing, or they're making a ruling, and then that's nationwide. So there are cases where people are like, the idea that there might be some use for this, but these judges are not just saying like, oh, only for a day or two. Basically, they're using this as, until the court case is over, I'm using this as a de facto judgment against the government, and we know, based on the Rhode Island judge, and he's pulling the best Hawaii judge impression he can do. He does not like Trump. This is his way of stopping it. It's his way of preventing it from happening. There's no way you're going to convince him otherwise. And even the First Circuit's like, buddy, you're kind of a little off kilter here. You might want to readjust. But these judges are using it as a way to effectively level a judgment on day one in a court case. So that's the purpose.
Can the law be clarified? Is that something the Supreme Court should come in and do? Say, this is what your actual scope is, like only in your district or whatever. Do they need to clarify what this is all about?
That's something. And Joe and I were talking about this, and I mentioned this routinely now. Clarence Thomas said this in Trump v. Hawaii in 2018. He basically, and he said this in an opinion. And the fact he said it shows that he's not the only one thinking it. We're getting really tired of you guys screwing around like this at the district court level. The idea that there's a gajillion TROs and everybody's running around with their hair on fire. They're basically, the Supreme Court's going to get very tired of that. And it sounds like they are.
Well, can I make a point here? Because I'm afraid, and again, this is the chat's gonna hate me because it's lefty Nate again, but I gotta tell you straight. What about Judge Kaczmarek in Texas? There's also another Judge Tipton in Texas, and I'm thinking maybe people don't realize this, but when Biden was in office, Republicans did what's known as form shopping. They went to Texas and went to particular district courts. Now, why did they go to these district courts? Because let's say in New York, there are like 20 or something district courts. So I mean district judges. So you go there and they go on a wheel, and you don't know which judge you're going to get because it's really a random thing. You can hopefully get a good judge, but sometimes you won't.
Yeah.
But in certain districts, in particular Texas, like I forget the name of the county, it's like Laredo County or whatever. But it's a small county in Texas where there's only one judge. So what they do is they'll get somebody who lives in that district and file their paperwork there because they know that they're going to get that friendly judge. One of the judges is called, his name is Katsimark, or yes. So and if you notice, a lot of, for instance, the stay for the anti-abortion drugs, the stay for a lot of the border policies, all came out of this district court, these national, and they came up, and this was a pro-conservative friendly judge out of the Fifth Circuit. So just so everybody understands,
it's a use.
This is just not a. Yeah, I just want to make it very clear. This is just not something that's happening now. This is something that's been happening all around. And in Delaware, guess what? It's a small state, so you get a small amount of, and you find somebody favorable, and you just file in that court. So hopefully the Supreme Court will stop it. But this is something that is done every single day. So that's why the executive orders are being stopped so fast, because they're going to these small districts with favorable judges, and they know they're going to get these rulings.
Eric, to answer your question, the answer is yes, that's how TROs are supposed to work. Unfortunately, with the way they have been operated and weaponized, that's not how they work anymore. So technically, any district court judge should be allowed to do it. And specifically because this is a national agency, right? And so it affects each state, it affects each district. And so district court judges can say, whoa, hold up. This is going to create an irreparable harm for everybody, not just us, but the agency, because you have to treat states fairly and equally, right? Because of that idea, we don't want you to continue this action elsewhere. So it puts a hold on agency action everywhere. So yes, is it just maintaining the status quo? Sure, it is. But the assumption then is that the status quo is not creating harm, right? That there isn't irreparable harm under the status quo right now. Now, the reason for that is because our assumption is that the agency, right, that these are political moves by the agencies, and these are admin decisions. If there wasn't a lawsuit already pending in the district court claiming some sort of irreparable harm under the prior policy, then we could say, oh, okay, there was this irreparable harm prior to the new policy. But whenever there's a new policy, these courts have the ability to put that policy on hold to maintain the status quo or the old policy. Because again, the assumption is that there isn't irreparable harm being done by the agency under the old policy.
But this is also, doesn't this matter if it's an as-applied challenge versus a constant? So in this, like for Trump's the 13th Amendment challenge, the one about citizenship, 14th Amendment citizenship challenge, birthright citizenship challenge, that was a constitutional challenge of the policy nationwide. So that's why the judges his not dismissal, his TRO affected everybody nationally. But if they would have made that challenge as applied to in this particular instance, then it's just localized to that particular circuit. Is that the way you guys understand it too? It's as applied challenge to this particular.
Because you're challenging the whole policy and how it's being applied, right? Versus this particular case, right?
And that's how the Democrats have been doing it. They've been doing these constitutional challenges, not as applied challenges into each individual party.
I do have questions though about some of the TROs that just seem wholly illegitimate to me. Where I really
some of them look at the Treasury Department, your own Treasury Department.
And that one was a hilarious one. That Rhode Island judge, these judges are just flying off the handle, and then they're like, "Oh God, we got to fix this."
Put up those web pages, damn it!
Yeah, that one actually makes sense because the Paperwork Reduction Act, which I talked about that one. The whole Paperwork Reduction Act case, that data is available. It's the government, like the data is the public's data. So the government removing data and information like that, they don't
like a DEI policy. That's I
understand what but that one's like based on how the law was worded. They can do it that way. Now they can do it. It's just they're going to have to go through and like, okay, here's notice. We're going to remove it. But the bigger ones, like the ones with the buyout, those guys got blown out of court right away. Now, I'm still disappointed the judges in those. They're letting them post bare minimum bonds if they're making them do it at all. And for some of these cases, like the judge immediately said, like, there's nothing here for me to do. You guys already have laws in place to go pursue remedies. Like, the fact that, you know, this lawfare will be allowed to happen and nobody will ever be held accountable for paralyzing the government, I think is the big issue here. That's why it'll probably keep continuing as we go forward.
I have an issue with the webpage one on the Paper Reduction Act, because that to me seems like it's one of those cases where there's a few people who are seeking a remedy. It's not the overall policy, but yet the overall policy is what's being stopped. And not just stopped, but being said, you actually need to reverse course and put these items back up on your webpage. That seems to me to be strange. And I understand that the rulemaking procedures under the APA would require that they obviously notice this in the Federal Register and go through that process. But there are certain administrative decisions that the agencies can make, specifically with this one, where it should be, I mean, it's, to me, it's a very, what's the word I'm looking for?
Capricious?
It's very surface level. It's not as though these papers can't be obtained. It's not as though these files and documents can't be obtained in some other way. So that's my confusion with that one. I also have issue with the idea of telling an agency. It just seems like the courts are far more prone to tell agencies what to do under certain administrations than others. That's all I'm saying.
Well, hold on, Danny. I gotta remember Chevron. Remember, you told me you hated Chevron.
Oh, I'm grateful Chevron's gone, baby. Hey, trust me, I hate it too. Trust me. But where an agency is taking the proper procedures and there's cosmetic, that's what I was going to say. The webpage to me sounds cosmetic, right? On the surface, take down these web pages. You can still find the data. It's still available. It's just, you got to go somewhere else. You're just not going to find it on an HHS website, which lends credibility to the basis of the survey. It's just like if we had done illegal. Okay, here's a great example. Let's say that we had taken data from the Tuskegee experiments and put them up on the HHS website. I don't think anyone wants that data up there because there's issues with the credibility and logistics of the actual data. So if they have it available, which it is available, these are all public documents, you can still go and seek them, but I don't understand why the agency has to make it public on their website.
I think it's clever what they did. From what I understand, is they mixed things together. So they had like a DEI garbage surrounded by vaping is bad.
Right.
And smoking.
And DV is bad.
And then they roll it on the same
and
page. And then they're saying, hold on,
and minority stuff that they're pushing too.
Right,
and saying, but then do you have access to, is your school facilitating, this one was weird, facilitating outside clinics and access to outside clinics. I thought that was so bizarre and sick, actually.
Why would I'm saying though is when you mix them all together though, then you have legitimate, you're like, you're taking down this legitimate information that's very important for people. And I think that was kind of a almost a setup, sandbagging, sort of like a bill, putting pork in. They're just putting a different kind of pork on the webpage.
I got breaking news.
Okay.
So now the Democrats are going to hate me, but anyway, just going to tell it.
By the way, hold on, folks.
Go ahead.
Nate actually is not against what's going on in New York. He's talking about principle because we talked about this earlier today, and he thinks it's hilarious.
Oh yeah. No, to be honest with you, I got no love for Eric Adams. If they are holding him hostage, I don't even care. They got to do what they got to do. But even though I disagree with the way they're doing it, I definitely agree with this. But so I was speaking to Eric a couple of days ago about a story that had popped up on my radar because some new information had come out. Now, Representative Ilhan Omar, there was the thing about her brother. So now it's been confirmed that yes, it looks like she actually did marry her brother
to get in the US.
to get him into the US. and there was a DNA test done and something else was done. Now the reason why it all became so fishy too is because her first husband, who people believe she's still married to, they had like 2 kids while she's married to the second husband. So it became things.
Okay, so at least the kids though are not a genetic issue.
No. The kids are from.
I'm sorry. That's what I care the most about.
They need to revoke her citizenship. I'm sorry. Using that level of fraud to obtain an immigration benefit is absolutely disgusting.
But she doesn't. It wasn't for her own. To be fair, it wasn't for her own naturalization. It was for her brother's naturalization.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was the other way around.
No, it was for her brother's naturalization.
I see.
But I mean, a stronger basis if someone was looking to remove her. Not that I think that everyone should be looking for that.
Maybe.
Is the lack of fidelity that she took an oath of allegiance when she became a citizen, and she basically holds herself out as if she's Somalia first, and she's supposed to have given allegiance to America first. So that's a stronger basis, although I don't think that's going to work to get her denaturalized.
Everybody in the chat, how is it fraud? Well, I hope it was fraud.
Out of Congress. She should be kicked out of Congress.
She should be out of Congress.
She should be kicked out of Congress, obviously. Yeah.
She's looking to become governor or senator now. She announced that she's having a gubernatorial run or a senator run, because I think So imagine the audacity of doubling down.
I'm seeing that the FBI had evidence of this and did nothing.
Yes, and did nothing. That's another flip.
Are you freaking kidding me? This is the same. Oh, yes. This is the same USA. Oh, by the way, you guys, this is the same freaking DHS that set up fake schools for immigrants to apply for fake visas, not knowing that they were fake, being told by the school administrators, we're doing everything lawfully and legally. It's okay. Just go ahead and apply for a visa. So these people were paying money in tuition and being told, yeah, you can go work jobs. That's fine. They're not freaking lawyers. They barely speak the language. And we had 20 to 50,000 immigrants that were being deported on that basis alone nationwide. And this bitch, the FBI knew about it and let it happen. Oh. That's disgusting. This is why Danny's going to turn off her camera.
Yo, listen, even on a positive note, though, with the FBI.
Oh my God, Danny.
They stopped the school. They stopped somebody out in Indiana from shooting up their high school today.
No, so it's like there are good agents in the FBI.
Well, no, I'm just saying when they're not. Yes, when they're tasked with not fabricating
when they're being
terrorist plots.
And that's what Cash.
Yes, they're actually taking notice of things, and they reported it. So they went and knocked on the local police department. It's like, hey, you should go arrest this guy. And they're like, oh, cool.
Look, it's
by the way, to his credit, Cash Patel, when he was being grilled, flat out said, "No, I want to drain them out of Washington D.C. and out to the field offices.
Be cops. You want to be a cop? Be
Sean
cops.
Said, and that is what we need in the FBI, if we even have it. Absolutely, because they just don't need to be in Washington. They don't.
No, you know what we need? We need freaking consistency under the law. Who the hell cares about Mayor Adams being prosecuted, except for the fact that they weren't prosecuting everybody? This goes to the confirmation hearings we heard yesterday of the whistleblowers who heard about SA that was going on in the local levels, but at a DA's office. They reported it to their superior. The superior covered it up. Meanwhile, they got an investigation brought against them, and they lost their security clearance, and they were stuck in limbo, career limbo for 3 years, and investigated by the FBI for what? For doing the right thing? For asking that this DA's office, this individual, be prosecuted or at least investigated by the FBI? I don't know. I'm not going to be giving out gold stars until they start actually enforcing the law equally in the United States. This is bullshit.
I didn't say to give them gold stars. I'm saying that there are good agents in there, and hopefully Cash Patel, who I like quite a lot, will help empower those good agents, the ones that are just out there doing the damn job. And I know, multiple FBI agents. I've interviewed a lot of them who are retired, and quite frankly, a lot of them are very embarrassed by the institution, because these guys retired in like 2015, 24, before the craziness happened. But there are good agents there, and we want them to be cops.
Yeah.
Just flat out be cops. There is a lot that they can offer. The behavioral sciences unit does a lot of work with serial killers and helping local people find them. There's a lot of great work with bank robberies, things like that. Get out of politics and get back to being just freaking cops. And hopefully Cash can do that, you know, and by clearing them out of Washington, I do think that is a good start because they have a little less influence in Des Moines than they do in DC.
I mean, Danny, I think it's good that there's a social program out there that people who need their ballot filled out for them by Ilhan's team can get paid $50 and they'll fill out their ballot for them. So, you know, that if people need money, you know, that I think it's good that she's she's filling a social need for those who need money. So.
All right. Well, you know, on this nice, calm episode of Laid Back Law, which, by the way, I like. I think it is important that we can hash it out, and nobody dislikes each other. We're all laughing and still having a good time, and that's the whole point of it: is to have vigorous debate and attacking ideas and not people. I think it's a really important thing. We're attacking ideas, we're attacking concepts, but we're not attacking people. You know, everybody is my friend, and I really appreciate that. And I hope that carries over to the chat and the comments as well. None of this is personal. We are all friends here, and a vigorous debate. Oh, it's kind of fun, actually. So, Sean, what do you have coming up?
We have ASAP Rocky's trial finally. The closing arguments took forever. And if you want to watch a prosecutor melt down and have a temper tantrum in the middle of closing arguments to the point where the judge has sanctioned him, like the attorneys have been so bad that if they offer an objection and they say too much, he's fining them $1,500 per time. It's actually really, the case is kind of a dumpster fire. We are finishing up the closing arguments tonight. It's a very interesting case. It's Rihanna's baby daddy might be going to prison.
Yeah. All right, Nate, what you got going?
Two things. One is the Ilhan Omar, because I did all this research on it, but now come to find out the FBI was sitting on this information for like 4 years. So it's this is going to be a very interesting story. And Tucker actually did. I found finding all this research on. Tucker did a segment on it, and they were saying that this was all racist, but it looks like it's true. It looks like she married her brother for the papers. So that's going to be interesting. Also, so I also did some research on, and I'll ask the panel this. This is a funny, interesting question. Which president has been sworn in the most? Which person who became president has the most swear-ins? Who's been sworn in the most?
FDR, I would think.
No, FDR is tied for number one.
William Howard Taft?
Nope.
Because when he got Supreme,
Washington.
FDR has 4. No, not Washington. Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Obama was sworn in 4 times.
Why?
So he is the only other president to be sworn in more than 3 times, because there's a whole bunch that has been sworn in 3 times. So for Barack Obama, that's his first term. When he did the swearing in ceremony on the stage, they flubbed it. They made a mistake. So he has. Then they did a second ceremony indoors. His second term.
That's right. That's why Roberts is nervous with Trump, because Roberts screwed up something with the
Obama. But now in his second term, so that's only 2. But in his second term, January 20th fell on a Sunday. So what they do if that happens, they have the person swear in Sunday at 12, and then do another swear-in service on Monday on the 21st. So he's the only other president to be sworn in 4 times.
How would that work, Nate, though? That's interesting, though, because in the case of Obama, because it was a second term, who cares? It's just a guy continuing.
Yeah.
What if it was a Sunday and this was like Biden-Trump, when you're changing
It happened with Reagan. It happened with Reagan. Reagan was sworn in officially that Sunday after he won from Carter, because the 20th came on a Sunday, and then he was sworn in again, a ceremonial swear-in on Monday. So he was acting president. He was president. He was president. The first swearing in on January 20th occurs on a Sunday. You're president. The second one is just for show. It's not actually an official swear-in. He's president Sunday. Yeah, and so and a lot of people don't realize too, before it became January 20th, the swearing in was March 4th. And there's a whole bunch of times March 4th came on a Sunday. So people would do that. They would swear in on the Monday and the Sunday. So they can.
So FDR might have been sworn in 5 or 6 times then.
No, FDR was only sworn in 4 times because every time it came on it didn't come on a Sunday. Yeah. So each one of FDR's it's 4 times.
Interesting.
All right. Well, cool.
Yeah.
Danny,
It's these are like interesting little quirky stories I like. So
You can go to Joe first.
Oh, okay. Danny wants to close it. Joe.
Yeah, my new gig now is I try keeping up with what's happening in the Trump administration every day. Like I do a nightly show, and 2 hours.
5 hours?
No, it's usually I try and condense it down. I know people are busy; they can't keep up with everything, and I basically, I've taken now to numbering like day 24 of the Trump administration, like what you missed today, because I don't think we've ever seen a president. They talk about what you get done in the first 100 days. Like this guy,
the first 100 minutes.
Yeah, this guy, the first 100 minutes, exactly. I mean, he's just one thing after every day. There's 5 new developments that drop, which are
he's doing a good job. We're not used to somebody doing what they said they were going to do. That's why it's so amazing. It's like, oh my god, he's actually doing this shit.
So that's pretty much what my focus has been, is just keeping up with what is happening in Trump world. And so if you want to find out what happened today, you sort of I try.
This is a 78-year-old man, by the way, that we're struggling to keep up with.
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
Got the stamina, chat.
That's basically what I've been doing. Is I try to keep people abreast of what happened during the last 24 hours that you missed.
Question for Joe: tomorrow, 12 o'clock. That's the deadline. What do you think's going to happen?
Tomorrow,
for Gaza.
Oh, God.
Gaza deadline. Yeah, remember tomorrow at 12.
Joe will be unfortunately on Sabbat, so he doesn't have to acknowledge it.
I just love how Joe. I love how Trump comes up with stuff like that. They ask him, and he's like, "Well, it's really not. I don't have. You know what? If it were me," and then he leans back. He goes, 12 o'clock by Saturday. And the boss takes it literally. They're like, well, we're not going to do it. And he's like, bro, I was making it up. Like, it was such obviously a hypothetical. I freaking love it. Sorry, I interrupted.
No, it's your time now. I did my pitch. Everyone knows,
Sorry for getting super passionate there. It's just really hard when you see, like, when you go through the immigration process and you see all these refugees walking through and being allowed to become citizens, and they catch you on literally misspellings and putting wrong dates on wrong addresses, and they say that you've now lied to the U.S. government and you're ineligible to become a U.S. citizen. It's extremely frustrating. So I apologize for that. And anybody who thinks that's not true, let me tell you, I've seen many, many immigration cases get thrown out on those types of technicalities, and it's awful. Whatever. We're creating a slave state, an underclass, whatever. It's fine. So we are going to be covering continually the executive orders that are coming down and the cases that are being brought against them, these TROs. We're reading through those. I'm also covering Baldoni. We have the second part of his complaint that we have to read through. We're doing a deep dive. I know everybody says, oh, Candace Owens is doing a deep. No, she's doing a talk show host deep dive. We're doing actual legal deep dive and looking at the merits of the case and looking through the evidence. So that's tons of fun. Go check out my channel.
Reviewing the case,
huh?
Candace Owens is reviewing the case.
Did
she figure out how to weave in and scream about the Jews while she's reviewing it too, or no?
Oh my God, yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't. I met her in person once, and I said right there she was a grifter. And I was like, I can't put my finger on it, but I just don't appreciate people who say things and then sincerely believe them later because it makes them money. And that's sort of the feeling I got from her. I might change my mind. I reserve the right to change my mind. She might be a wonderful person. It may have just been a bad night, but I was not thoroughly impressed.
Go look into her past.
Go
look up social autopsy, and you'll learn all about her.
Saying her first time around the block.
Oh, okay. So you're saying my intuition was right on.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep my opinion for now.
Go watch her Joe Rogan experience.
That was
that was
slaughtered her.
Yeah, that was kind of bad.
Anyway, but no, and I think that her leaving the Daily Wire has hurt her more than people realize. and her message is getting more and more and more polarizing all the time, which kind of happens when when things are wrong. You start lashing out deeper and deeper and deeper to try to get people to pile on because of controversy. But I don't want to get into that.
She'll be hanging out with Kanye before you know it.
Sean,
she already is.
Sean has been the one keeping up with all of the Aaron Imholt stuff. Sean, what do you think? Are they going to go to trial? Is Gino going to show up? Because we were talking about it earlier, but you're the guy with all the knowledge. So is he going to show up? What do you think is going to happen with that?
I mean, here's the thing. Stearns County, Minnesota put out a warrant, a nationwide misdemeanor warrant against Ethan Ralph for streaming a hearing. Like, I've never heard of that happening before, but I've also never heard of we're going to drag people from 1,000 miles away for some rinky-dink felony. And it's like, and I prosecute in the county. We were right on the state line, and like, we wouldn't have done this for that. And like, even if they were like next door, it's like, is it a murder? No. And then, what? That's the thing here. I'm surprised by it. I get the feeling. I think there's going to be a resolution because I think there are enough evidentiary problems with this that I think it's far from a slam dunk for the state. I think there'll be a plea offer to this. I bet it's probably going to be a misdemeanor. So there'll be another win for the toe. Sorry, Baldo Bros. That's my thought. I don't think it goes to trial.
All right. Well,
can I just say one thing real quick, Eric?
Yeah.
I really admire all the attorneys on your panel. Every week I come on, I'm blown away. They're so excellent. You guys are so smart, and it is always very humbling and a very warm experience for me to be humbled, but not in a negative way, but to feel educated and to feel like I'm growing as an attorney. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you, guys. You guys
I agree.
rock.
Nate and Joe are very good about that.
Well, I learned
to
be fair though, I learned more from you guys because Joe. How many times has Joe had to correct me on this stupid thing? And then people always remind me of it. Joe's corrected you, or what's his name, Eric. So yeah, so I take it all the time. But I always say this: I love being corrected because I'd rather be wrong in this moment and be corrected than go on the rest of my life being wrong. So yeah, so the corrections, I come here to be corrected.
It's like saying your fly's open. No, please tell me if the fly's open.
Yeah. I don't get mad when they tell me I'm wrong. I just want to know why. That's it.
That fly is open.
All right. Well, everybody, thank you. Zip your fly and have
Joe, does that count as doing work if you have to zip it?